Eagles Niners NFC Championship preview here. It's a betting preview. We're watching CBS. Yes, we're watching CBS. Let's go ahead and dive into what they think is going to happen. And then, of course, I will react and kind of talk about what I think is going to happen. As you all know, I'm very invested financially in the Niners because of a Super Bowl ticket I made way earlier in the season. I think week two I made it. So it's over 20-1 to win. So I'll try not to let that be biased, and I'll break down what I think is going to happen in the game. So take it away, CBS. Usually these guys are wrong almost every time.
The title game precedes the AFC. Taking a look at 49ers and Eagles, top two seeds in the conference. And this, from a Vegas perspective, has stayed pretty steady, unlike Bengals and Chiefs. Eagles laying 2.5, but they're...
All right, so that's not really true either. So it opened up, I think it opened up at Philly -1 or minus 1.5, somewhere in there. And it got bet up immediately. And it sat at 2.5. Now it's just a 2.5. And it has sat there all week. So, first of all, I took Philly on the money line when it popped. So it popped at -1 or -1.5. I can't remember. This is Sunday night. This is like Sunday at midnight when I'm shopping lines and stuff. So I think I got them at like -130, somewhere in there, -140 maybe. I'll have to check. But what I will tell you is I think this is a bad matchup for San Francisco. And I think Philly, at home, I think they are the better team. I think San Francisco is really good, but they're going to need a lot to win this game. Now, let me say this. I think people look at San Francisco and Dallas, and I think they say, well, man, San Francisco didn't look very good. Like Philly dominated the Giants, and San Fran just kind of squeaked away with Dallas. San Francisco covered. San Francisco didn't play well. I think we can all agree with that, but they covered. They won. They did what they had to do, and they beat Dallas. And that's all you can ask a team to do is beat who's in front of them, cover. If you cover, then you're over expectations. You're doing something that they didn't expect you to do. On the flip side, Philadelphia beat a Giants team that we all know are frauds, right? We knew going into the playoffs, the Giants and the Vikings were the two biggest anomalies in the playoffs. The Giants are not better than Detroit. The Giants are not better than they're probably not better than Seattle. Teams that no one really gives a second thought to. Are the Giants that much better than Green Bay? I'm not sure about that. So I think Philly is getting a lot of respect for beating a Giants team that people knew were bad, and conversely, San Francisco is getting no respect for beating a Cowboys team that's pretty good. So I will say, to temper some of that, and I kind of had to check myself as well to temper some of that. Like, damn, San Francisco kind of squeaked by, but Philly looks great. Philly's going to roll. Obviously, I told you I took the Philly money line, but I don't think this one is as clear cut as people are making it out to be.
There was some thought that coming into the divisional round, that if we saw 49ers and Eagles, San Francisco might actually have been favored by maybe a point or a point and a half. That's not the case. NFC Championship game seeing a total of 46 at Caesars Sportsbook. All right, let's tackle this game. Tommy Tran, Brady Quinn, and Pete Prisco. So we get the top two teams in the conference. And before we get to your selections, guys, what were your big takeaways in terms of finally getting to this matchup? Because whether it was going to be...
These are the two best teams, regardless of the line, regardless of the game, regardless of the outcome. Right now, this is the best thing you can ask for. I think for all four teams. In the NFL, you do not want upsets and underdogs. You don't want to see, the Bengals versus the Jaguars. You don't want to see that. You don't want to see the Giants versus the Niners here. You want the four best teams, and then you want the two best teams. Sometimes upsets are fun, sometimes underdog stories are fun, but a majority of the time, you want to see the best on the best. For a 17, 18-week season, a lot is put into this, and the NFL, I think, is one of those sports where it's better if the favorites win. College basketball is one of those things where people want to see upsets, want to see underdogs. Totally get that. In the NFL, I don't think it's like that. And so I think we absolutely have the four best teams. I can see any combination of teams winning. And I think no matter what the combination of teams winning, we'll have a great Super Bowl.
Eagles versus Cowboys or Eagles versus Niners? This is kind of what you wanted to see at the top.
Yeah, look, you've got the hottest team right now in the NFC in the San Francisco 49ers, and you've got the best team, if you look at their body of work, the Philadelphia Eagles, probably one of the most talented right next to San Francisco. So whether you're talking about roster construction or the season as a whole and how these two teams got here, these are the two best in my opinion. So I'm glad to see them squaring off. Pete, I think it's going to be a tight game. I think it's going to be a close matchup between the two. I know each team's probably got some concerns as they're going into this, but it should be one heck of a matchup.
It's a little old school when you look at the way the league is going with all the quarterbacks and wide open and everything else. You have two teams that ideally their offense is predicated on running the football, and you have two defensive lines that get after it in a big way. This is going.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a different kind of running game. I think it's a new school running game. I think when you look at these two teams, it's a ton of pre-snap motion. It's a ton of creative runs. It's a ton of misdirection. You know, it's not your old school runs, but both of these teams do live and die by the run game. They want to run the ball and they want to do it creatively. You know, Eagles are a little different because they want to run Jalen Hurts. He'll be running a lot of quarterback designed runs, a lot of QB powers, a lot of things like that. And then also he can scramble around. Purdy is a little different. He wants to scramble around. Sometimes he wants to escape too much. And I think I've talked about this on Twitter, but he escapes way too much out of the back of the pocket for me. I think that's when he's really showing his rookie, inexperience, if you will. When he escapes out of the back of the pocket versus climbing the pocket and escaping up front, all those plays are dead plays. I've watched a ton of the Niners this year. I would wager somewhere around 90 to 95% of the time when Purdy escapes backwards and rolls out, he's just going to end up throwing it away. And sometimes those plays get extended a really long time for him to throw it away. But hopefully Shanahan has kind of helped him out there. And I want to see more of Purdy escaping up and getting some yards up the middle running wise. I'll say this about San Francisco's defense. So you're going to hear a lot about San Francisco having a really good defense and a generational defense. I've said that plenty of times, and I agree with that. Where they are best just so happens to be where Philly is the best. So Philly wants to run this like east to west, sideline to sideline running game. It's a lot of, like I said, misdirection, counters. It's a lot of, edge rushes, stretches, quarterback around the ends, a lot of sweeps, things like that. They're not just going to Derrick Henry you and run it up the gut. Well, San Francisco is the best at stopping that. Their linebackers are so fast. They're basically defensive backs. They're basically giant safeties. They're so fast that they pretty much stop that. They pretty much stop the sideline to sideline, east to west running. So what we're watching here is strength on strength. You're watching best on best, and that's going to be where it's won. I would say within the first quarter, certainly within the first half, you'll be able to know what's going on. If Philadelphia is gouging the Niners, if Philadelphia is getting after the Niners, if Philadelphia is chunking them for 4 or 5 yards a carry, if they cannot stop those running plays, if it's 10-0 at the end of the first, if it's, if you can just see it like that, the Niners are in some major trouble. On the flip side, if they are stopping them, if Philly comes out, punts the first couple times, and we're looking at a 7-3 game at the half, 10-3, 10-7, 7-0, something like that, it's kind of a cagey affair, then San Francisco has a chance. So that's something to watch for early in this game, especially if you're live betting. But that's where this game is going to be won, is going to be Philly's ability to run sideline to sideline and San Francisco's ability to stop that. Now, where San Francisco is weak defensively is their secondary, especially giving up the big play. Philly is really, really good at getting the big play. They are a run-first team who just so happens to be able to beat you deep. So I'd be looking for the Devontae Smiths. I'd be looking for the A.J. Browns. I personally think that's where Philadelphia is going to pull away. I think Philly's going to hit on some deep passes. I think Jalen Hurts is going to find a lot of success passing the ball, even though they expect him to run. I think that he's going to be able to exploit that secondary that can get exploited. San Francisco gives up big plays in the passing game, and Philadelphia loves to do that. So as you're watching what I just told you with the running game, watch for that secondary. Watch for what Philly can do deep. Philly will not be trying to beat them at the line of scrimmage as far as like screens and short passes. They're going to try and extend the play, get their wide receivers down deep into the secondary, and get those 40, 50-yard completions.
Going to be a violent, nasty, hitch-in-the-mouth game, and I can't wait for it. You know me, I love quarterback play, I love passing, but I also like the nasty, old-time football back in the day. That's what this is going to be. You have the physical Eagles offensive line, which can knock the snot out of you because they're great across tackle from tackle.
Probably the best offensive line in football.
Against that 49ers defense that flies to the football. And they play like they have 12 men on the field. So you better block the 12th man because he's always around. No matter what, he finds a way to make a tackle, and they hit you and they put you on the ground. And on the other side, the Eagles had 70 sacks.
I know.
Yeah. That's 70. 70.
70.
And 4 guys had double digits. Think about that. 4. They can come at you in waves, and they will get after the quarterback, and that means Brock Purdy could be in for a long afternoon.
I thought
Trent Williams, the offensive lineman for the Niners, is probably the best player, like the most dominant player at his position in the NFL. I'm not going to say he's the MVP. I'm not going to say he's the best player in the NFL. He's an offensive lineman, but man, he is incredible. So they won't be getting to Brock Purdy from his side. Ask Micah Parsons how that was. I think Philly, they will get to Brock Purdy. I think Brock Purdy has been fortunate with a lot of these throws. Brock Purdy has been very fortunate not to turn the ball over more. He's had tons of throws that hit defensive backs in the chest or in the hands. They just dropped it. I don't think Philly's going to do that. I don't think Philly's going to let that slip. So I look for Brock Purdy to turn the ball over. I think Philly will have success in that passing game, like I said. I think San Francisco is going to find themselves in a game they don't want to be in. They're going to find themselves in a game where they're behind, where their quarterback doesn't have time, where they can't run the ball, because they're behind. They're going to have to throw. And those, to me, those things add up for a long night for Philadelphia or for San Francisco.
There was 2 questions going into last week's round of games. The one was Brock Purdy, how he'd handle that. And I thought he managed the game well. He didn't make the back-breaking mistake that Dak Prescott did in a few instances. And then for Jalen Hurts, it was the question of the shoulder. You know, how healthy was he early in that game? He throws, a 60-yard completion to, I think, Devontae Smith. And you're going, okay, he's ready to go. Now, he didn't have to do much because that offensive line play, like you talked about. But I thought those were kind of questions coming into it. And I think they calmed everyone down a little bit if you were concerned about the health of Hurts or at least Brock Purdy and how he'd handle that playoffs.
Yeah, I think we got to slow it a little bit on Purdy. He was a little unsettled early in the game.
That's fine, but he didn't make the mistake.
He didn't make the mistake. I'll give you that.
Here's the thing I'll say is, I thought for the most part, the ground game, and it wasn't a great game plan either by Kyle Shanahan versus the Cowboys, and give Dan Quinn and their staff and their players credit, but I thought they stopped the run for the most part, and I thought they did really try.
Something else to remind you of is that Philadelphia has the weakest strength of schedule in the NFL. They've played a incredibly weak schedule. So this is a step up for Philly. This is a step up from what they're used to. This is a big step up from the Giants. And that does give me pause, because for a team like that's a perfect storm, right? Where you don't want to be a prisoner of the moment. You don't want to take what just happened and make that gospel. So what just happened? We just saw in the divisional rounds, we saw Philadelphia absolutely look as dominant can be against a bad team. The whole world saw that. So, of course, they're going to be all over Philadelphia. And just like Brady said, going into last week's game, we were sitting here thinking, well, Jalen Hurts might not be healthy. We don't know how healthy he was. And the Eagles did dominate. But are we sure that Jalen Hurts is healthy? Or is all of our fears from last week totally gone? Just 1 week, we have no more concerns about Jalen Hurts. Those are the kind of things you have to factor in, because the market and the public certainly is in love with Philly after last week. So that does give me pause. Now, I will say this as well. The Niners are at a wonderful teaser spot. So plus 2.5, tease them up, 6-point teaser. You get them at 8.5. Go through 3, go through 7. Fully go through 3, fully go through 7. All right? I've done that. I have teased the 49ers, teased them with Cincinnati earlier in the week. And I wanted to tease them with Kansas City when Kansas City was at 2.5, but I didn't pull the trigger. So if you're a teaser player, especially an advantage teaser player, and if you don't know what that is, then you are not an advantage teaser player. Maybe I'll make a video on that in the future. But I think the Niners are a great teaser opportunity, a great teaser leg.
Until the second half, yeah.
Wait, until the second half, well, when it was a little more out of hand. But at that point, you have to say, like, they didn't really allow them to gain momentum. They didn't allow them to break off too big of a play, too big of a run, and so they kind of got things going there in the second half. So I think they'll be different this time around, though.
By the way, his big play to Kittle, that was an illegal formation. He was ineligible. They got away with it.
That's not true.
Well, he's not off the line. The end guy's not off the line.
Use check 100%.
No, he wasn't.
Then
the tackle is. Then the right tackle is. They're lined the exact same.
Then the left and right tackle were. Because the way the offensive line
left tackle was up, the right tackle was back.
That is the dumbest point that people have made.
I watched it 5.
Brady going after Pete Prisco. Nothing like, I mean, look, guys, again, CBS, I'm not sure how much these guys are getting down for. I'm not sure exactly how much they're betting. I'd probably cut this part, Pete. I'd probably cut the illegal formation part. It wasn't called, didn't matter. Kittle made the play. Purdy made the play. It all happened. We can't factor in a non-call on an illegal formation, especially if Brady Quinn has watched it a million times. And if Brady Quinn says it wasn't an illegal formation, then I'm okay with believing it wasn't. And this look in Brady's face right here is pure disdain, pure disgust.
Different ways, and
I've watched it every way. You watch it every week.
It was ineligible.
If people are going to start saying that, then go back, comb through every single game. Every single time you see players lined up.
I agree.
Blade of grass is all.
I agree, but he wasn't. He was ineligible.
That's
but
not true.
Having said that, that was a great play by Purdy.
Oh, and that was but that was the reason why Dallas didn't cover him because they thought he was ineligible.
No,
okay.
But that was a great play by Purdy. It really was, and a great catch by Kittle. And a great catch by Kittle.
And a bad play by
I just think that Purdy was a little unsettled, and now this is your first playoff game on the road. Okay, he's every hurdle he's hit. Good defense, he played okay. Now you're on the road against a pass rush that gets after the quarterback, and I think that could be a problem for Brock Purdy.
It could be a problem if the Eagles can stop the run, and that's where I think there's going to be success for San Francisco. I think this is a different challenge. If you go back, we talked about it before the game. Dan Quinn knew a lot of the schematical things that Kyle Shanahan wants to do. They coached together back.
There's a ton of sacks. I mean, you don't really hear about this a lot, about Philly being able to get after the quarterback. I think Philly's got probably the best offensive line, defensive line combo in the NFL. The thing is that Kyle Shanahan knows this. And Kyle Shanahan is the master of the run game. He is not going to put Brock Purdy in situations where he can get sacked if he can help it. That's why it is imperative for the Niners to not fall behind. If it's 17-0, if it's 10-0, and Brock Purdy has to start throwing the football, this is going to become a factor. But I think with Trent Williams, I think with the running game, if they can control the game flow, and that is so important for a team that wants to run the ball, being able to control the game flow. You see teams that want to run the ball like Tennessee, all right? The Titans, you know what they want to do. Tennessee gets in a lot of trouble when they lose control of the game flow, and all of a sudden they have to pass. That's what the Niners cannot do, is be put into a situation where they have an early turnover, or they can't stop Philly, or Philly scores, Niners punt, Philly score again, 10-0, 14-0, something like that. The game flow is getting away from them, and it is so important that it doesn't happen.
In Atlanta, and I think that played out throughout the course of the game with the way the Cowboys stopped that rushing attack. I don't think we're going to see the same thing from the Philadelphia Eagles. We talked about it throughout the year. Halfway through the year, they were really struggling to stop the run. What'd they do? They bring in Linval Joseph. They bring in
Ndamukong Suh.
To a degree.
Jordan Davis is back.
Yep. He's going to help that as well. I think this is going to be different, though. I think they're going to attack the edges with McCaffrey and Elijah Mitchell and Deebo Samuel. They're going to find.
Something else to think about is San Francisco's kind of banged up. McCaffrey's calf or lower leg, I'm not a doctor, but something is questionable. Deebo's questionable. Elijah Mitchell's banged up. So they're all expected to play, but when it's that pivotal, or the running game is that as pivotal as it is in this game, I don't like that either. That these guys are possibly not at 100%.
Find some bigger holes, some bigger gains too. I don't think it's going to look like what we saw last week.
See, I disagree. I think you get up the field and get those. They have guys that can get on the edges.
That's fine, and they'll slip right in through the C gap, right outside the D gap. They'll manipulate those edges.
I get it.
Run a lot of pin and pull. I'm telling you what you're going to see. I told you last week. You didn't believe me because you picked the Cowboys.
Let's go, Brady. Brady's fired up. I love this. CBS. You got okay, guys. We watched a few of their videos this week. I've generally thought Pete Prisco doesn't really watch the games. Brady, very fired up. I like what I see out of Mr. Quinn.
So adamant about it.
Well, I mean, I picked the Cowboys based on their defense playing well, and the defense played well. Who knew Dak Prescott was going to turn into a lemon over?
Who knew? This is why I don't think Pete. This is why I don't think Pete watches the games. Who knew Dak Prescott was going to turn the ball over? He leads the NFL in interceptions, Pete, and he missed 5 games. literally everyone knew that he was going to turn the ball over. Why? Because he has turned the ball over more than anybody in the NFL this year. What an insane thing to say by Pete. I think Brady is about to crucify Pete Prisco right here for saying something that's stupid.
Some of us didn't have much faith in that.
Well, you picked them because you thought the Niners would move the football. You didn't think Dak Prescott would play like that.
Football. They just kicked a lot of field goals.
They didn't do a lot. I think when you look at it, the concern is Purdy. Can he do what he's done? Because
I don't think the concern is Purdy. I understand the whole, like, he's a rookie, he's inexperienced, road playoff game. He is not going to be asked to do that much. He's going to be asked to do what he did against Dallas. The thought is that they're going to have more success running the ball than they did against Dallas. That's it. That's the bottom line. And honestly, Purdy, with the help of George Kittle, won them the game against Dallas. You know, like, they don't want that to happen. Kyle wants to beat Philadelphia on the ground and leave it up to Christian McCaffrey and Deebo Samuel. Christian McCaffrey was pretty mediocre last week, you know. So another thing that San Francisco is really, really good at is getting the ball to their playmakers short and letting them get yards after the catch, otherwise known as yak. That's going to be so big this game. If those receivers, Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, George Kittle, the rest of them, Christian McCaffrey, if they can get big yak, then San Francisco is going to have success. Because when they do have to pass, it's going to be screens. It's going to be short, quick routes to those players and letting them run around. So I don't think Brock Purdy is not going to. They are not expecting him to go and win this game. That is not what's going to have to happen.
At some point, don't you have to go? You are what you are. Or is he the next Tom Brady? I mean, you're somewhere in between. You either pick last, you're going to be a starting quarterback and be a darn good one, or you become who you are, which is the last.
I don't think that's true either. I mean, like Nick Foles, Joe Flacco, people like that who won the Super Bowl, they won because they played at an incredibly high level for a small stretch of time, and that was it. You know, like I don't believe in that whole, like, you are what you are. This is just what you are. You know, like, you're going to either be really good all the time or really bad all the time. Like, you can have peaks and valleys. You can play like the best player in the NFL for a stretch and then peter off, or vice versa, like Geno Smith. Geno Smith's been bad his entire career. This year, he plays really well. Is he expected to just play really well next year? Who knows? He could be a little bit worse, a little bit better. Players can ebb and flow. Depends on the situation. Brock Purdy was being coached by Matt Campbell at Iowa State. You don't think that's different than being coached by Kyle Shanahan? Like, and that's another thing too. How much have we seen the draft be totally wrong with their projections? Okay, so why do we have to hold certain players to a high or low standard with the draft? How many times do people get that flat out wrong? What does it matter where you're drafted? If, you know, like Christian Ponder was drafted, I think, 12th overall. Okay, so Christian Ponder is being held to 12th overall expectations. He should just be held to, like, what we're seeing when he plays. Patrick Mahomes, same thing. Patrick Mahomes was taken, 10th overall, 11th overall, something like that. Why is he held to a different standard than Jamarcus Russell, right? Like, or Matthew Stafford. Once the draft is over and you're playing, all that shit goes out the window. It doesn't matter where you were drafted. It doesn't matter what you did in college. It doesn't matter any of that stuff. If you start to show things on the field in the NFL, that is how you should be graded. Jimmy Garoppolo, great example. Jimmy Garoppolo didn't play at Alabama. He didn't play at USC. He didn't play at Georgia. All right, he played at where? Eastern. Oh man, where was it? It slipped me. Eastern Carolina, maybe. I want to know where it was now. We'll check at the end of the show. He played at like Eastern Carolina or something. All right. Does anybody talk about that? Does anybody say, well, Jimmy Garoppolo doesn't have that collegiate pedigree? Who gives a shit? Once you're in the NFL and once you're doing your thing, all that stuff doesn't matter.
Last guy picked in the draft.
Do you think you know who he is?
No, I don't. We might know more on Sunday. I can tell you that. If he goes and beats the Eagles in the championship game, then he's their starting quarterback next year, guaranteed. If he goes and plays poorly and is 12 for 25 with 2 picks, then you have major questions about him.
This all hinders on the defense for San Francisco. If they can keep this a tight game, a lower scoring game, by the way, I still think it hits the over. I think this over-under is way too low considering both teams can score.
I agree.
But if the San Francisco 49ers defense can keep this a lower scoring game like we saw last week, I think the 49ers will be able to run the football. They'll be able to hang around in this one regardless and not put too much on Purdy's plate.
All right.
All right, my prediction for this, tease the Niners. I would take the Eagles, or I have taken the Eagles again on the money line before it got to 2.5. I have teased the Niners up. I would do the same if I was you. Over under, I like the under. I think Kyle Shanahan is smart enough to kill the game. I think you're going to see Kyle Shanahan kill that clock. He loves to take 30 seconds off the play clock. So, when you do that, you lessen the possessions, you lessen the time of the game, you shrink the game. Both teams run the football. Clock is going to be moving. That's another thing you got to think about. The clock's going to constantly be going on both sides. So, two good defenses as well. I think the teams, are super evenly matched. It's going to be played in the, red zone to red zone. So, I would go under. I have Philly. I like the Niners on a teaser. I know I'm giving you all a lot of stuff there. I will predict Philly wins 23-20. All right, so Jimmy Garoppolo went to Eastern Illinois. Where did I say? Eastern Carolina? I was close. I knew it was Eastern something. Damn.